right, time now for This Week in Auto History. Konrad has that. Where are we going to go to today?
Well, this week in auto history, in 1914, the first Dodge car leaves the factory. After finding massive success as a parts maker in Detroit's auto industry in the early 1900s, the Dodge brothers, John and Horace, signed a deal to build parts exclusively for Henry Ford. So the Dodge brothers worked for Henry Ford, and then in 1914 built their own car. Henry didn't pay them well. No surprise, Henry didn't pay anybody well. But what he did was he gave them stock in Ford Motor Company, and that stock in Ford Motor Company blossomed into a significant amount of money, and it was enough for them to start the Dodge Motor Company. In 1977, the 100 millionth Ford was built. It was a 1978 Ford Fairmont.
Futura. Oh, my God.
And as the car rolled off the assembly line in Mahwah, New Jersey.
Mahwah? Is that like Wawa?
No, that's code for tub it out.
It spent many of its early years traveling the country as the 100 millionth Ford built. You know, funny thing about that car,
of all
that was
the
actually
things to have the 100 millionth. You know, they could fix that.
You could have
made
made
it a 150 or something,
or a Mustang, or
anything,
something.
but not a Ford Fairmont.
The chassis of that Fairmont is the same Fox body chassis of the Mustang, so it could have been a Mustang, but it wasn't.
Okay.
In 1996, this week, GM releases the EV1, their first electric car. General Motors released it, manufactured in Lansing, Michigan. It had a range of 70 to 90 miles. So you talk about range anxiety.
I will never forget when I first saw that. You know, our Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, for some reason or another, he was on radio at the time, and I met him for lunch.
And he had one of these?
He had one of these things, and I thought,
ugly duckling.
God, that thing is so ugly. And he looked at me and says, "You think?"
Well, the other thing you got to remember, and this is the genius of General Motors, and I won't go down that rabbit trail, the original name of this car was the Impact.
Oh, great.
What a great name for a car. Well, GM had so much confidence in it that they only made it available through a lease program with an MSRP of $33,995.
Wow, that's a lot.
After the lease had concluded, GM collected as many of them as they could and scrapped them and stacked them up as scrap
cordwood.
They crushed them and scrapped all of them, except a few that were in museums. I think Jay Leno has one in his garage still. So, but generally they were all destroyed. And then in 1998, Larry Shinoda passed away.
Oh yeah, Larry Shinoda.
Now, Larry Shinoda,
Corvette.
very famous designer, was integral in the design of the '63 Corvette.
Yep.
The new, and he was a fan of the split window, though there was reasons for the split window because they couldn't lay the glass correctly in '63.
And most people don't know that. Mm-hmm. But the split window, they had to make it because the original design was 64 and beyond with one solid piece of glass, but they couldn't do it.
And a number of people, once the rear glass was released for the 64, went in and cut the split out of it and put the 64 rear glass in it. Really destroyed the value of them. But, you know, if you think of Larry Shinoda, he was not only a great car designer, he was involved, in my opinion, some of the most iconic cars ever produced. The '63 Corvette, along, you know, he and Bill Mitchell, but also with the '69, '70, '71, '72 Mustang. You know, he was a designer of that. And then finally, the Grand Cherokee. He was the designer of the Grand Cherokee, and then there's one more. And the you know, and you think that was the start of the small SUV world, was the Grand Cherokee. So, you know, Larry Shinoda, very, very famous designer, but his passing was a loss to the auto industry. That was This Week in Automotive History.
That's good. I like Larry Shinoda. Yeah, I remember him very well. Back in the day, he was a big deal.
Oh, yeah.